Okay, thanks everybody for being here. So we don't have, I have 17 minutes and 56 seconds. So let's not, yeah. So, gosh, it seems a little bit high up. Can you guys see me okay? Okay, cool. I don't care if you can't. No. So I quit. Like, what do you think when you see this? It sucks. Yeah. The great resignation. So I won't belabor that, but we know what that means, that there are droves and droves of individuals not just leaving our field, but leaving the workforce in general. Statistics I saw from a colleague that does data crunching on labor stats, show that we've essentially got this 11 million openings, but we don't have 11 million unemployed people even. And you juxtapose that with immigration really heading down, and you juxtapose that with our very heavy need for humans to take care of other humans. So this great destination, I'm going to talk about three great things, ironically. But the great destination it has a lot to do about, in my opinion, inclusion and belonging as well. So we'll get into that in just a moment. So what's this? What's this picture? What comes to mind for you, I guess, for this picture?
It's a British sports car.
Okay. Who said that? It's good. Okay. What else?
And that woman on the left is your guy like he is. That would be the type of woman that I wanted with us.
Gotcha. Fair enough.
Reenactment of Harry Met Sal's.
I hear you. I like that. So do you mind if I ask?
It'd be an Austin Healey 3000.
Gotcha. So anybody else light up in that fashion when they saw something in the picture? If you did, don't tell me. No, but that is perfect, sir. Do you mind if I ask what is your profession? Like what?
Well, my sons and I own and operate 27 independent assisted living communities in the West.
Ah. Do you have a retirement date set?
Yes. When rigor mortis sets in.
Oh, nice. All right, you threw me there. This is the great retirement I'm showing. In that seat, one of them is a leader of an organization that is retiring probably in the next 5 years or so. I'm not asking for a show of hands, but I would assume that if the trends say so, there's a certain percentage of the folks in this room that will retire in the near term. And there's a great deal of concern that their leadership is not there to succeed you in the quantity of qualifications, in the amount of willingness to put up with whatever you have put up with, and the inspiration to give it a try. So this other great resignation is not a resignation, but there's a great retirement taking place. So again, nothing you don't know. So what's this one? Any thoughts come to mind? I'm not going. Okay. Tell me more. Style, okay. Other words, other thoughts come to mind? What? It's not for me. Yes. How many of you could see this as a prospective resident in your community? Just by a quick show of hands. She might be there. I consider this slide the great rejection, which is boomers and younger boomers in particular saying segregation is no longer acceptable in a community. And I mean that from the basic sense of I don't want to be segregated on the basis of my age. I mean, how often do you hear people say, I don't want to be around a bunch of old people? Like, so why would I move to a community? I got old people in my neighborhood. I don't need to move to a community to be around a bunch of old people. Or to note that they move into a community and that community maybe is less diverse and has less difference of perspectives and backgrounds than where they currently live. So, when you think of the primary markets, when you think of how individuals are thinking about where do I go where I belong, you're really, in my opinion, trying to figure out what is this individual rejecting? Because I think there's two things that we've historically seen rejection around our, if you want to call it product, is individuals that don't, kind of look like her, that kind of fits the model. You can see this person living in your community. So then you end up with this issue of how do we figure out that this person that traditionally was our bread and butter is like, no, I'm not going for it. I'm not going for it being a bunch, around of 70, 80, and 90 years old. I'm not going for it from not being around students. I'm not going for it from being around restaurants. It's great. I would love to move up to wine country. Sure, those individuals still exist. But there is a juxtaposition that I would offer to you. That the inclusion economy and the longevity economy are inextricably connected. That the labor statistics that we see are showing there is such a precipitous drop in individuals willing to do this work, and they are not coming back. And that doesn't mean there's a bunch of people unemployed that would consider our field and just are like, I don't want to come back. You're talking about the numbers don't add up. 11 million openings or job vacancies, but way less, millions less of individuals actually unemployed. And just what little I know about labor and economics is there's two buckets you get it from. You either get it from your current population or you get it from immigration. So we're really screwed. Like, I don't know how else to say it, because what we're left with is a very hard decision around, okay, who will we now use to create community? How will we find individuals to serve? How will we find individuals that actually want to live? And what I offer to you today as part of this discussion is that inclusion is what a lot of the data is saying that you're trying to do, that you're trying to get to. You're trying to be more inclusive of more ages. If I would imagine nobody would be upset if tomorrow, 50% of your occupancy flipped over and it was all individuals that were at the bare minimum allowed for your community. And they came in flush with cash and everything was great. But those individuals, we all know we're fighting for a very small piece of the pie. What was it yesterday? Somebody was talking about, 100 prospective residents, age and income qualified, will result you in maybe 10 seriously considering your community and 5 to 7 actually moving in. So what I pose is that the inclusion economy meets the longevity economy because this talks about a strategy of going after the 90%. The individuals that won't settle for what they see. I was talking with the outreach coordinator, well, I shouldn't say the name of it because then you can really know who she is, but she's going to be moving into Medford Lee's in New Jersey, Quaker affiliated community, and she's really excited. But she said, it's not quite what I want because there's just kind of a bunch of people that look like me. And she said, but I'm gonna go because I have a friend there. And then I started talking, and I'll tell you a little more about it later on, about kind of my startup and new venture around communities of inclusion and belonging. And she just looked at me like, oh, I didn't know that was a thing. So when you talk about how do we really meet true business case needs, it's no longer, in my opinion, about making the business case for DEI. It's deciding who amongst all the individuals that we've traditionally not tried to employ or have as residents that we are willing to reach out to. Much of the data would show you that Those that are unemployed are also unengaged. They're unengaged because of barriers to the labor force around mental health, around childcare, around just being a marginalized individual in general, that there are these categories of individuals that, or maybe they have a past criminal record, there are categories of individuals that, no way, you could not come and live, serve, work, board, nothing in our communities. And I'm not saying that changes right now, but the data shows is that you're either going to fight for the individuals that you have right now coming to your communities and working and serving there and board members, and everybody's looking for a smaller and smaller piece of the pie, or you're going after the individuals that are disengaged because they don't see what they want from a workplace standpoint or from a community standpoint. So real quick, what I'll share is that I believe these buckets, board, residents, staff, leadership, family, friends, partners, meaning business partners, all have a stake in inclusion really being at the forefront of everything we do. And each of them have their own reasons for doing so, but what I would challenge you to is, I think all these categories have a very traditional response of like, well, the board's like, we got the church, we got, Pastor Steve, who's been the chair for 10 years. We've got, Sister Anne Marie, who really wants to see this vision of X, Y, and Z before she passes away. She holds the purse strings for the church. There's a bunch of things that are a part of the culture of an organization that aren't bad, but they are predicated upon being what they are. The money is predicated upon being what it is. From a philanthropy standpoint, my opinion, when you talk about boards that right now say, well, we can't be anything different than we are because we have certain seats for people, blah, blah, blah. And then, we're in I'm trying to think of a state where I don't know somebody's from, but we're in North Dakota, maybe. We're in North Dakota. There's not much we can do here other than what we got. And then you go, well, when's the last time your board met in person? Well, we don't meet in person anymore. So you mean somebody that lives in like Oakland, California could be on your board now? What I would argue is that for this great retirement that's taking place, the leaders that are interviewing for those jobs and those C-suite level positions, many of the individuals your boards won't be looking for. Because when someone's in a role for 20 or 30 years, it's my opinion that that board, who's most likely never hired a CEO because of how long the CEO's been there, or the owner's been there, or whomever, is gonna look for comfort. They're gonna look for someone similar to who just retired. And you hear this, such and such has built a great legacy and we wanna make sure, but it is a barrier to inviting more inclusivity into the community. Whether it's a resident standpoint, whether it's from any semblance of diversity that you may think of. So I won't belabor this anymore because I want to do a quick exercise. So I'm going to invite you to, in your head, please do not write this down unless you feel comfortable writing it down. In your head, we're going to fill in kind of in a Mad Libs way. Please don't say it out loud. Mad Libs way, this invitation. So we cordially, meaning you, we cordially invite, think of a group that you would love to invite into your community. And because it's in your head, whatever way you want to think about that group, for me, I would want to cordially invite into my communities, individuals that understand and experience neurodivergence. So that means folks with ADHD, autism, depression. Then the idea is please join our, and what would you describe your current community as? So whatever the description is of the cordially invite, if I want to cordially invite in folks that have some sort of their brain processes things differently, then I got to say to folks, okay, well, we're a community of individuals where if you get stressed and anxious and cry and work, you could lose your job because you got to keep your shit together. We are a community of, what are you a community of? You are a community that is virtual, based someplace, multi-site. We will be more inclusive by what are you willing to do, like to get that person to show up, that group of individuals, and then being able to say, okay, we commit to really creating community where you feel that you belong and that you are included. By when do you want to do that? And who's in charge of it? And that does not mean, as we all know, who are you going to assign this to that has already got enough stuff on their plate, but who is it that is going to be in a decision-making chair that will be able to impact in making this change? As you think of that, take a peek at this wheel. I snatched it off of a Johns Hopkins report they did a few years ago. But when we were talking about those cordially invite, one way to think about it is these are a lot of different perspectives and shades of what diversity can be. And for the most part, we are very specific about which one of those categories we will market about, meaning saying out loud, but we're also even more careful about which one of those categories, not that we will exclude, but that we see our status quo is not perhaps allowing us to see and be more welcoming of people with different religions. So, things to consider. Know yourself. Now I'm starting to, it's like 40 seconds, I'm freaking out. So know thyself. Are you ready to welcome inclusion and belonging into your community? And that is a very serious question. Are you ready to welcome them? Because let's say you do a huge whatever push, and then inclusion shows up, diversity shows up, and they don't like what they see because the thought process was just getting them there. But getting them there and knowing that your community is not what you're inviting in. If you're trying to bring in different perspectives, how is that perspective going to be welcome? Get uncomfortable. This is uncomfortable stuff. Yeah, I don't think anybody's going to disagree with me. You got to give a shit, quite frankly. I think that we do not, and I'm going to wrap up, Michael. Ooh, I got one of these. So you gotta care, right? And if you care about someone, you know them. And if you don't know them, then how can you include them? And if you don't include them, then how are you gonna have a more diverse organization? How are you gonna be more equitable? And how are people gonna feel that they belong unless you understand them? That doing an employee, and I'm saying this from personal experience, doing an employee recognition week or events during Ramadan, where we do a lot of stuff food-based, does not work because the people are fasting, right? And so we discovered in one community I was serving that like people they weren't offended, they were thankful for the food, and they took it with them. They said, I'll eat it later, because I can't eat right now. Cede some power. The decision-making structure right now is what it has been. The recruitment firms, for the most part, the boards, leadership, the major decision-makers have remained the same for a really long time. And so what are you willing to give up in the decision-making standpoint to provide representation so that someone that doesn't feel included by looking at your organization feels included because they see that you've represented what they sense and what they feel and who they are. So it's a very intentional thing. Change something. anything, if right now, choose a category. Let's go back real quick. Choose one of these categories and decide, can we do something different with our board composition? My opinion, I think that is the least risky place to go because you have a captive audience that cares a lot about the organization and also is easily scared by the fact that you may be retiring. And so they really do want to have an interest in talking about what it means to be more inclusive for their board because, yeah, I'll share this with you. Over the years, I've had calls from recruiters and interviewed and stuff. And what I've learned is that if the Zoom comes up with the search committee or the board and I don't feel included, I won't be getting that job. And I do not mean that in a malicious way. I don't mean that in a biased way. I mean that as in I am not feeling I see myself in that organization, and I don't know why the organization would see me being a part of them. And again, not malicious. I could be an Episcopalian that is looking to be CEO of a Baptist community. I could be a guy from Minnesota looking to interview and be CEO of a place based out of Chicago and Midwest. You're like, if you're not from the Midwest, I don't know why you're not from the Midwest, but you're not coming here to be CEO of this place because you clearly don't understand. Heard that. So anyway, sorry, I got myself a little bit off track there. So change something. Change something that you can change. And whatever that may be. And if that is your own education about learning about a different modality of diversity, then do it. And then be honest and candid. In my opinion, that each time there is kind of a look at it and say, well, it's not that bad, or maybe it's not that mission critical, or this is what we can't do. If you're not able to kind of look in the mirror and say, well, we aren't welcoming of different perspectives here. So what does that mean, and what are you willing to do about it? And I'll be frank with you, is that there's plenty of providers that think, well, that there isn't anything we can do, and we're not going to do anything about it. And I don't think that that's going to change dramatically. Everybody in this room is going to leave here just like in charge of like everything inclusion afterwards, I'm sure. But like it's a tough thing because I think many organizations are looking outwardly for what it means to be more inclusive and have people have a sense of belonging, more diverse. But it really is an deep internal look that is more uncomfortable than it ever will be with you trying to interact with someone different than you and feeling that discomfort, in my opinion. What I'll tell you real quick is I started a new venture called Lawson. Our objective is to create communities of inclusion and belonging, inspired by the legacy of a man named Bayard Rustin. He's a civil rights activist that was mostly washed out of the history books, but Bayard is attributed with being the mastermind behind the marches on Washington, with bringing nonviolent protest back from Gandhi in India, as well as organizing bus boycotts. Just a huge, formidable part of it, and Martin Luther King Jr.'s right-hand person. Bayard was a black man, which wouldn't be hard to imagine, gay, out of the closet gay, 50s, 60s, and 70s. Has the arrest record for lewd behavior in public to prove it. He was a Quaker, which meant that humanist and a person is everything. I don't hate another individual. I don't wish ill will upon another person, and I want myself to be treated the same way. He was also in a committed relationship with a white man half his age. So he literally must have gone to a book and said, how many ways can I have the country of America in the 50s, 60s, 70s despise me? And if you look up some of his speeches, he will tell you, I wish no harm upon any human. The reason I say this to you is that I had this notion of what does it look like to create communities where Bayard Rustin and his surviving partner, Walter Nagel, who's very protective of Bayard's image, what would it look like for them to feel welcome and included in a community that was created from the ground up? And a week or so ago, no, 2 weeks ago, the Rustin Center for Social Justice in Princeton, New Jersey, agreed that we would partner to create Rustin communities. And this will be the first venture of W. Lawson, along with the notion that just creating community is not enough, but being alongside others in this room that maybe want to go on a journey. Yeah, so that's me. That'll give you information on me if you want to take the QR. I'm sure you'll find me on LinkedIn. And that's my favorite quote from Bayard Rustin. That's it.